Now I would like to invite Neville Teagarden from AI Capital as one of the panelists. Please welcome. And Zach Wellis, please come over. Kelly Perdue and Kevin Liang, please join me. Good to see you. Up to you guys. Yeah, so we already discussed a bunch of things in AI, but we can have a different twist for the discussion. But before that, I would like quick introductions by the panelists. Neville, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? 20 seconds.
Is it working? There we go. We got it. Yeah, very quickly. I'm an MIT AI lab guy by training.
A little bit closer.
I'm an MIT AI lab guy by training. Spent a few years there along with building AI systems for Fortune 500s in the second generation of AI. So, of course, I'm dating myself there. Survived the AI winter by becoming a CIO and CTO in the Fortune 500, 3 different companies, and then came back to my passion in AI with a startup company that successfully exited in 2015. And I've been investing specifically in applied AI software companies for the last 7 or so years since launch of our first fund.
Cool. Thanks. Kevin?
I'm Kevin Jiang. I'm a managing partner and co-founder at Mangusta Capital. We're a seed stage AI-focused fund based in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. Prior to Mangusta, I was at SoftBank as part of the Vision Fund for the last 10 years, helping scale the Vision Fund platform with Masa. Investing in everything from transportation logistics to, I think, the first generation of AI companies, from the Ubers to the other, Coupang and Arms of the world. Very excited to be with you all today.
Thanks. Kelly, please introduce.
Hi, my name's Kelly Perdue. I'm general partner, founder at Moonshots Capital. My co-founder and I are both West Point graduates, served active duty, serial entrepreneurs. We're in Fund 3. We invest in what we call late seed stage, and our focus, I'll probably be the least technical of the panelists, but we focus on extraordinary leadership. We think at the end of the day, it's the team that wins in any competitive environment, and that's what we're looking for in our deals.
Zach, please.
Everyone, my name's Zach Colis, San Francisco-based early stage investor. Funds are about 100 million in aggregate right now, solo GP. Been doing this for about 10 years, investing in AI.
Amazing. Cool. So, Kelly, you invested in XAI recently, so what was the driver for that?
I said I went to West Point. There's something called the Army-Navy game, which is a really big deal in the United States. West Point plays the Naval Academy every year. And I asked my good friend, the founder and CEO at ID.me, to join me in a suite at the Army-Navy game. And he said, "Can I bring a +1?" I was like, "Oh, the suite tickets are expensive. Who?" And he goes, "E." And I was like, "Who's E?" And he said, "Elon." And I said, "We can find a seat for Elon." So I got to spend about 10 hours, 6 hours at the game, and then a 4-hour dinner with 8 of us, and got to ask him a lot of questions. I was the only one not drinking at the 8-person dinner, so it was pretty enlightening. Fundamentally, I think that data is one of the most important ingredients to who can win or what should win. And when you look at all of the different sources of data that he has that are proprietary, from right now, at least the driving data from Tesla, and eventually Optimus provides everywhere a car can't go, not only on the planet, but not on the planet. And then you add Neuralink data from the brain. I think he's got 2 implanted so far. And then everything in Starlink, you start to see that there's a pretty insurmountable advantage in terms of a lot of that data. Second, it's difficult to bet against Elon on anything, as the Democrats found this recently. And then I'd say that the third piece is I want him to win because he's focused XA on what he calls truth GPT, and not having anything except, at least a 5 nines truth associated with what's coded and influencing how that AI learns is more important than anything else. And an example of that is when you saw when Gemini launched with, the U.S. founders being women and all different things because of the Google influence on how things were coded.
Cool. Thanks. Kevin, what is your experience in AI?
So it's funny, we're actually co-investors in XAI together. So, but you spoke about it very well. I think a lot of the same reasons that, his ecosystem, the data they have from Twitter, which is real-time data that very few data sources have, comprise a lot of the reasons why we invested as well. For us at Mangusta Capital, we're focused on seed to Series A vertical AI startups. And so what does vertical AI mean? We think that as you see the foundational models provide the tools, every single industry out there, every single sector is going to be transformed and revolutionized by vertical solutions that improve productivity, automation, provide better research and decision making for those players. And so we find a lot of founders building extremely interesting solutions that are monetizable today across things like medical, healthcare, tech, fintech, consumer AI, tax, and legal. And so there's a lot of different sectors out there that we're very focused on finding the same advantages, proprietary data, proprietary integrations, as well as a management team that can execute and scale fast with a first mover advantage to be able to invest in those companies. And frankly, those founders are relatively early stage today. So usually we find a lot of pre-seed, seed founders that are building in those spaces.
Cool. Neville, so you're very experienced in AI as a builder. So how do you choose the right AI companies these days?
Yeah, well, I think that we bring the combination of being a corporate exec and understanding the purchasing process and how software is evaluated for purchase and justified on an ROI basis. And so when we look at an applied AI solution, it's much more about what's the business value proposition of the software, how does it transform a particular industry. We're very vertically industry focused. We find that typically you can use 20% of the AI to get 80% of the value, and so companies don't need as much venture support. So we find very affordable investments, let's just say, to get maximum returns on our investment from that venture capital that we do invest. And so it's all about metrics. It's about how the company justifies purchasing our company's software. So
you're one of the few companies that trademarked AI capital, right? It's kind of so how did you make it happen before others?
Well,
did you trademark?
I guess there was a little bit of a blessing and a curse, I think, in knowing AI so well from way back, that we started seeing the trend about 2008 and started up an AI software business that, hey, we're into the third generation now, it's coming. And so we ended up starting that and then grabbing AI.vc and AIcapital.com.
What year was it?
Getting started.
Cool. Zach, please share your experience in terms of investing in AI.
Yeah, so I had the good fortune about 10 years ago of sitting down with one of my founders who I'd known him for many years, and I'd always tried to hire him, and he was too smart to let me hire him. And we were talking about his company, and he was like, "Yeah, we could, with the advances in processor speed and AI, we believe we can make a car drive itself." And 10 years ago, it was a crazy idea. I was like, "Nice, that's fucking awesome." Okay. And lucky enough to invest in him. A year later, GM bought that company for $1 billion. So suddenly everyone thought I knew what I was doing, which I did not, but better lucky than good, as we say in poker. But now on the streets of San Francisco, you push a button, a car with no driver shows up. It will take you wherever you want to go for the same price as an Uber. It's 5 times safer than a human being, and that's the beginning. So literally in very short order, it will be virtually impossible to die in that car, whereas in America today, 40,000 people a year die from cars. You think about that, 40,000 dead people in the US alone every year. Think of the number of children that is that are fucking dead because of human drivers, and that's over. And so for me, the consequences of what AI is going to do is just is phenomenal and it's just incredibly exciting. And it's not just in that, in every other industry, in every other space in the world. AI is changing the world. Google just released their AlphaFold technology for free use to any academic institution. And so you think of the number of new drugs and new pharmaceuticals will be created out of that. So it's really hard not to just like be incredibly excited about the work we do. And yeah, I'm having a great time. It's really fun.
And you mentioned that you are solo GP, right? Do you have a team or you operate by yourself?
This is the entirety of Coleus Capital right here. I mean, I have finance back office, but yeah, it's me.
Do you have external capital or you operate with your own capital?
No, so the current funds, I operate off of 4 funds, about 100 million. I wish that was all mine, but no, not all mine. And then I've deployed about 100 million other people's money.
Cool, amazing. You mentioned cars, and I watched some movie, kind of futuristic movie, but it can be a glitch in the system, and then you see all these Teslas go to the same location and crash into each other, and because of like fully autonomous cars, misfunction, right? So kind of, how do you see the world being protected from these type of glitches?
Yeah. So first of all, if you look at the level of automation of the Uber fleet, the scale that it's operating at now, it's incredible. That curve looks like this. And there's a lot of people who basically like, oh, there's humans behind it. Like, you can't scale something that rapidly with humans behind it. Like, at the end of the day, the technology actually works. It's a question of how do you solve for corner cases when they do occur, and when those corner cases do occur, how do you make sure that if you hadn't programmed the car to solve for a particular problem, how do you solve for that? So you have a human behind the system to basically fix it, but it's just like the modern airline industry. 100 years ago, they crashed all the time. Now they never crash. It's because we slowly have fixed problems, one problem after another, until now they're virtually perfect. The same thing is happening with autonomous cars, one step at a time. And so if you look at the ramping of basically processing power, AI technology, all these things, if you look at those ramps, literally our children in their lifetime will never drive a car. It's over. Like, it's completely over. Like, all of us who think of cars as human-driven, like, we are an anachronism. We are like the people who basically are like thinking about horses and buggies relative to cars. Like, that world is literally over.
So where all these legacy cars will disappear to?
They're gone. Like, so the interesting thing that nobody talks about is, so if you think about it, basically, take the Google chart, that graph, and you extend it, which that's what's going to happen. What happens is that users will shift from driving their own cars the same way they shifted from driving their own cars into Uber. They'll shift from driving their own cars and Uber into self-driving cars. What that does is it removes consumption of normal personal automobiles, because you don't need to own a car when you push a button and you get a car and it takes you wherever you want to go at a fraction of the price of the Uber. As that consumption goes down, the auto manufacturers will see their growth of basically new car purchases and manufacturing go down. So what does that mean? They will stop investing in next generation vehicles because they will not have growth anymore. They'll have a decline curve. As soon as the decline curve starts, then basically you'll see nations fighting with each other about who's going to protect their auto industry, because right now the average car sits empty, unused 90% of the time. It doesn't operate. Whereas an autonomous car, literally every minute, every day, it's driving around. And so, like, you have this whole legacy industry of human-driven automobiles that will basically begin its decline curve in the not-too-distant future. And as soon as that decline curve starts to happen, investment stops happening. And as soon as that happens, that whole industry just becomes one big decline curve. And so who's going to buy a car that's the same as it was 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago? Nobody. And so we're literally, that's like not too far away.
Cool.
Super cool.
Thanks. Kelly, how do you do due diligence on AI companies, right? So like Elon comes to you, it's no-brainer, but lots of wannabe or early stage entrepreneurs come to you. How do you vet them?
So every deal that we've looked at for probably the last at least 18 months has included some form of AI as part of the business model. You know, it's not it's like literally every single one of them has something associated with it. A lot of our investments, say half, are in what we call dual use. So there's an application for the government side as well as the commercial side. And when you look at companies like Gretel AI that enables synthetic data to allow companies to use their proprietary data to access LLMs without any of that proprietary data getting into the cloud, or it all stays secure and private. It's something that seems like a no-brainer now, but 5 years ago when we invested, it was not as obvious as that was going to be a need. Red 6 allows for a fighter pilot who's training in their aircraft, pulling 3 or 4 Gs, to go in visual range with an equivalent near peer and do a dogfight and or practice refueling and or work with 15 to 20 unmanned vehicles, drones, but those are all augmented reality, and you can train in your aircraft at altitude above the cloud and do all those things. It's a massive impact to the training capability. So it's usually us thinking about what is the end client going to get from that AI capability, and if it's a no-brainer and it looks obvious to us, then we have to assess the team and whether or not they're capable of delivering on that promise. So it's a combination of kind of technical chops of the team, but also understanding what the end user is going to need.
Cool. Kevin, in terms of ethical AI, what is your kind of perspective when you invest in a company? Do you consider that this AI will be ethical? Or
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. Actually, one thing I'll say to Zach's passionate speech about autonomous vehicles, I think it's very hard for people to understand how powerful it is unless you see it every day, which we do in San Francisco. I literally see a Waymo car every single day, if not one, like multiple cars. And so unless you see being in Silicon Valley, it's truly amazing and just kind of like living in a dream world in some senses. And they're really great drivers. Like I've never seen an accident. I mean, obviously you see them on websites, people posting, oh, this happened or that happened. I have never seen an accident where a Waymo was involved. And oftentimes they're much better than human drivers when I'm driving or walking across the street. So it's really quite something that you have to experience.
The roads in US are quite organized. Like if you drive in Portugal, there are some places where one car can drive and it's two-way street.
We have one-way streets in San Francisco too. It's actually, San Francisco is not as, I don't know, maybe Lisbon is probably a little bit more messy, but San Francisco is also not a very clean and easy place to drive. So I think you have to see it to believe it.
I drove 10 years there, so I'm quite familiar.
Yeah. So to your question on ethical AI, I think the broader thought process is really, you have to think that AI is going to do what we program it to do today, right? Until we get to a consciousness level, maybe at some point you may think, okay, they have their own mission that they may want to accomplish. But I think at least for quite a while, we're really programming it to do what we want it to do, right? So for a lot of the AI applications that I look at, for example, whether it's legal or tax, the AI is doing a specific task that it's been given, and it's working off of specific data it's been given. And so where you look at that, I don't think there's really openness for it to go outside of its core purpose. I do think what's really important, though, is for us to recognize that people will use AI for nefarious purposes as well. So it's not necessarily self-driven harm to humanity, but rather criminals and other fraudsters using AI to commit fraud or to commit criminal actions. And that's where you really want to be careful. And there are a lot of businesses that are doing things to prevent that, right? New cybersecurity companies, new companies that are catching impersonators who have bank accounts or identity information that it's using to defraud regular everyday consumers. And so I think that's really where we should be focusing our efforts, is on investing in supporting companies and people who are working for those initiatives. Because actually, I think it'll be quite a while, in my opinion, before we reach a point where we actually have to think about AI taking control of its own destiny and actually trying to, accomplish its own purposes in perhaps a more futuristic world.
Can I go riff off of what Kevin just said? So, on the unemployment relief dollars that were distributed during COVID by the federal government through the states, the estimate is that about $400 billion was stolen. $400 billion. primarily nation state, China, Russia, Nigeria. And a company that we'd invested in called ID.me enables online identity verification. And within about a 90-day period, they had to deploy across 36 states. And for instance, in Arizona, there was something like 300,000 applications a week coming into the unemployment offices there digitally. And when ID.me was implemented, it dropped to 5,000 a week. And the dark web chatter went from, okay, ID.me's in Arizona, move over to Utah. Literally, it's a full-on.
So they're able to track
all
people.
of the bad guys are using all of the AI for their primary business models, which is to generate their revenue.
Yeah.
And they're becoming incredibly sophisticated in using AI for deep fakes, impersonation capabilities. So I, second the investing in and trying to arm the good guys with the right type of AI to avoid those types of things from happening.
Yeah, you can add on to that. I mean, so if you think about the last panel we had, there was a question about mining lithium. The mining of lithium is just a function of our ability to utilize lithium to basically store energy more effectively. But the cool thing we're now seeing in the utilization of AI for material sciences is that AI enables researchers to research faster, better, and to solve more problems more quickly. And so if you think about where we are as a species in terms of our energy consumption, there's no way, as far as I'm concerned, that people will stop consuming energy. And even if we convince some people to consume less energy, the rest of the world who doesn't utilize the Western standard of living is going to consume it because it's fungible. So like we use less, they'll use more. And so the only way that we solve basically humanity's problems with global warming is if we basically like invent new technologies, and AI is going to get us there. And so like I think a lot of these ethical AI arguments have to talk about their trade-offs, which is the trade-off of saying, let's slow down AI, is the trade-off of saying, let's slow down solving our energy problem, let's slow down our ability to basically solve global warming, let's create a world with more risk. And so there's these trade-offs are very real, and people need to talk about them versus right now where they're just like, ooh, it's scary, let's slow it down.
Nabil, where do you see the biggest opportunity in enterprise AI? Like, which applications and which industries are you passionate about?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're doing applied AI software for a reason. We're outside the Bay Area where we invest typically. Don't need the unicorns, don't need the multi-billion-dollar TAMs for what we do because we're very practical, pragmatic. We're not shooting for the moon. There's other guys for that, but our opportunity set in that area, though, does a lot of good to the term of ethical AI. We focus on a lot of health-related, a cluster of industries, healthcare, life sciences, pharmaceuticals. In one area, there's great opportunities there, both domestic and in the U.S. as well as around the world. And we like the supply chain for the AI in that space, which is all of the data underneath. On the other side, we like core industries, resolving supply chain issues in manufacturing, energy and natural resources, and food supply. And again, there's a lot of societal good involved in that. At the same time, we can be very pragmatic and practical on delivering business value to the corporations and all of that type of thing, and smooth out supply chains in the development of AI in those industries.
Cool. And so in previous discussion we had the notion of that AI will be commodity soon, right? It's kind of same like mobile is. Nobody talks about mobile. When do you think that AI will be just a commodity and everything will be AI driven, right? So when it's going to happen? Zach?
Yeah, I tend to smirk at that view. I think there's three ways to think about it that are important. One is that AI basically can escalate the level of problem that it attempts to solve. And if you think about basically the power of AI in your phone. So we don't yet have the full capabilities of what you have when you have the full access to a supercomputer or a cluster in our phones. And when we get there, it will be very useful to us in our daily lives on many different levels. Getting there is hard. The companies that get there we'll get there better and better, faster and faster. There'll be less power consumption. Basically, they'll be able to do more. And so there's no way that that becomes commodity because someone will do a better job at that. The same thing when you think about basically what a cluster can do today. Like the race is on to basically take AI to higher and higher levels. And the difficulty that they're facing in the status quo is, I think, a testament to how hard that's going to be and how long that's going to take. So I think it's highly unlikely that you end up basically having a commodity there. And then the third area that I'm particularly excited about is like we look at LLMs like it's the end. And like that was a step function change, but the next step function, whatever that will be equally exciting and will take us to another level. And so we don't know what that one is going to be yet. Like 5 years ago, everyone's like, AI is dead, AI is boring, AI is over. And then everyone's like, oh shit, look at it. There's going to be another step function, and it's going to come at some point. And when that happens, once again, we will not be commodified. So I think it's no chance in hell.
Kelly, what is next after LLMs?
Yeah, if I knew.
So I think to answer that question and this question, it's really hard to know because it moves so fast and so many creative people are using AI to actually figure out what's next. So it's going to move way faster than we think. I think from impacting your daily life, already happening whether you know it or not, and then it will be purposeful interaction when you start to pick out what agents you want to help you. I was just talking with another investor outside about going to these conferences and trying to figure out how to take notes so that you don't forget the 27 people you met by the next day. And there should be, I think Igor's got his glasses on. They're not fully functional yet for, I can look to the left and say that's a follow-up, look to the right and say don't ever call that person again.
He has fireflies inside, right?
Yeah, exactly, fireflies. But I'm more excited about like massive impact to your daily life. And one of our investments is called Figure AI, humanoid robot, and this isn't really a bet against Elon's Optimus, but I think Brett Adcock, that founder, exhibits a lot of the same characteristics that Elon does. But it's very, very possible that in the next 24 to 36 months, you could pay 20 to 30 grand to have a humanoid, a 1.0 for the home, humanoid like, 5'8" to 5'10", 5'8" to 5'10", sorry, not in centimeters, and 150 pound that can do every single thing that you do not want to do in your house, and a whole lot more. And I think will eventually become some form of a commodity. We won't have to have cars, but in the house, but we'll have a humanoid robot or two that do everything from teach your kid to play football perfectly, like trained to whichever athlete you want them to be trained like, to take out the trash and feed the dog. So that is going to happen a lot faster, I think, than most people understand or realize. And you're certainly going to be willing to not pay your $500 to $2,000 car payment or more for this crowd, payment a month on your lease and lease a humanoid robot for your home.
Yeah, it's a great example, but how do you coexist with all these AI-driven robots in the future, right? Drones, humanoids, vacuum cleaners, all these devices that serve you. Like, how do you see the lifestyle of people gonna change?
So I focus a lot more on, I would say, kind of the software side of things. I think the hardware side, obviously, I think it's a similar answer, but you coexist in a world where it's going to be a hybrid transition, right? It's not like tomorrow we're going to have, I think maybe in a couple years we'll have the robots, but they're not going to be able to do everything in a year or two. They have to develop, they have to learn, they have to be able to do the more complicated tasks over time, right? And similarly, I think for software, we also see a similar evolution where, for example, we invested in a company called TaxGPT, which helps with, it's an AI co-pilot that helps tax accountants be able to automate some of the rote tasks that they have to do, fill out forms, do more research more effectively. And so instead of 3 tax accountants doing the work that they would have to do manually, you may have one guy or gal who can be able to do what those 3 people used to do. And so it's really augmenting and supporting the ability for a person to do more than they would be able to do before. It's not necessarily getting rid of that human altogether. And I think we're going to have a bit of that transition period, both on the hardware as well as software side, over, say, the next, 2 to 4 years, as we get to a point where the AI and the hardware become so ubiquitous and so powerful that you can potentially actually just replace, 3 or 4 different people with one specific application. So I think for me, I see a lot of use cases where we look at call center automation within, say, banks or insurance companies, very highly regulated, complicated industries. But there are companies right now, and founders we're backing, that are able to do call center automation where it's debt collections, customer service calls, in a voice that sounds basically like a human and is actually more empathetic and more effective than a human. Because a lot of people are not trained to be, say, emotionally,
nice.
The most empathic people. And so if you have an AI that's actually trained to be the best of that, you can actually have more effectiveness with those types of calls using a voice that is specifically optimized for a specific customer. And so I think that's another really interesting area that we're seeing a lot of development in.
Thanks, Kevin. 20-second answer. What humans gonna do when AI gonna do all the rest?
Actually, I think one of the most important things there is to think about your children and where they're going to be educated and what they're going to be educated in. And basically, the simple message is stake out some things for your children to learn that computers aren't good at.
Cool. Thank you, guys.